Good day, I'm Dr. T, and welcome to the Home Office. So, you're interested in becoming a higher ed educator. I love the career. This is my dream job, and if you're passionate about it, more power to you. But it would be wrong of me to not give you a bit of a heads up. See, historically, higher education has been a growth field. More and more students growing up and going to college means bigger colleges and more faculty, aka more jobs. All good things come to an end. See, we've got kind of the confluence of two different trends happening. For starters, if you look at birth rates, those are on the decline. They have been for a very long time. And we're actually going to the point where we're dropping below replacement level. Basically, we all grow old, we all die. So if we have children, those children replace us. You need about 2.1 children per woman. It's usually measured per woman because, it's kind of easier to keep track of that part. And you need a little over 2, one for her male partner, and then a tenth of a child or so, a little bit extra to account for those children who don't grow up, which is a horrible thing to think about, but is unfortunately part of our reality. As we drop below replacement, then the number of children being born are actually going to go down. So populations will decrease. Now, that will take a while because people live a long time, but in education we're going to see that a little bit sooner because, of course, we're not dealing with an entire person's lifespan. We're dealing with how long it takes the person to grow up to the point where they become our student, which for higher education, traditionally, the traditional student is 18, 19 years old when they enroll, so you're talking a little bit less than 20 years. If you look back about 14 years to 2008, we really saw a bit of that slide in population growth with the Great Recession. 20 years after that puts you around 2028, 2029 or so, at the end of the 2020s, beginning of the 2030s, at which point the number of children growing up and going to college is going to be going down. Now, that whole birth rate trend has been going down for a very long time. Why haven't we seen this problem beforehand? Well, there is a second trend that is also changing. If we go back to the GI Bill and World War II, the US was afraid of a massive flood of young servicemen dropping the cost of labor and thus creating a recession. We had seen poor outcomes after World War I, after the Civil War, and so the GI Bill was created. Help young servicemen coming back from World War II to either make a small business and create jobs or get them into college where they wouldn't be entering the labor force right away and thus kind of stabilize the labor force. It worked. It worked great. It kicked off an era of prosperity for the United States because the increased education that was also went along with this led to a higher skilled workforce, and things went on well. And so we had a bunch of students going to college with GI Bill, and that just kind of kept going. And the percentage of Americans that went to college just kept going up and up and up. And by the way, I am being US-centric here because that is where I live and that's where my references, which I'll get to at the end of the video, focus most heavily on. But this is kind of a global trend. GI Bill wasn't, but the demographics going on here are fairly global. Okay, so at least for Americans, the rate of college enrollment, the percentage of children who grew up and decided to go to college, kept increasing over the 20th and beginning of the 21st century. But not everyone is best suited by going to college. Some people are much better suited going into a skilled trades. Some people are better suited going straight into the workforce. Some people just don't fit well with the academic setting. College doesn't work well for them. So the theoretical maximum percentage of students that go to college is not 100%. Right now, we're looking at about 60 some odd percent of students who have engaged in some degree of college, taken some classes, maybe not completed their major, but done something. The majority of those will complete at least some degree. Well, we're really reaching that saturation point. There are pockets of students who, for various reasons, would be best served going to college, but really aren't planning on. And so historically, we've been focusing on these students to try and grow the number of individuals going to college. And it has worked in the past, but these pockets are now smaller and smaller. It's still valuable to reach out to these individuals, if only for their benefit. The fact that these people would be better served going to college, but for one reason or another, typically cost, it's not really a viable option for them. That said, this is an increasingly small number of individuals, so we can't rely on this to do any growth. And the offsetting of increasing percentages versus the declining number of individuals born and then growing up to become students is no longer capable of continuing. We've plateaued. And so during the 2020s, we've kind of got a plateau of student enrollments, probably going to go up just a little bit towards the mid to the end of the decade, and then drop pretty hard in the late 2020s, early 2030s, and just kind of keep going through the 2030s. We don't know what the 2040s will bring because that's more than 20 years away. The class of 2040 is currently being born, but odds are it's probably going to keep going down as birth rates tend to be on a downward trend, both in the United States and globally. So what does this mean for you as a potential new faculty member? Well, there's a couple of trends going on here. With a decrease in students, that means enrollments are going to go down. Now, it's not going to affect all universities the same. Big elite universities, in many cases, they're really a hedge fund that happens to award degrees. They'll be fine. They'll attract however many students they want. There will be no problems for them. They might have to lower their standards just a tiny smidgen. For other universities, they're going to probably need to lower the standards a little bit so they maybe not be quite as selective for the students coming in, and they might see enrollments not hitting the goals that they would like. For the smaller colleges, this could be very bad for them, especially if they were already kind of a niche private institution. A small drop in enrollment might be financially critical to them. So that's going to put financial strain. We could see the closure of smaller colleges and universities. The community college sector will probably hurt as well with these trends. And overall, this means a less need for instructors. So universities and colleges are going to be looking to cut costs, and we're one of the line items that they might be cutting costs with. There are other line items that I personally think, like athletics, that the cost could be cut with having less to no adverse effect on the students, but that's a different story. With this, though, there's just going to be less job openings in many cases. Additionally, there's probably going to be a trend moving from tenure track to non-tenure track positions. I'm non-tenure track. I teach something like 3 to 5 courses a semester, whereas a tenure track professor would probably teach something like 1 to 3 courses. So one person who gets paid less and teaches more. Budget friendly. Now, if you want to be non-tenure track, that's good. If you want to be tenure track, that's bad. Additionally, don't look for the most lucrative of pay packages. So all of this is not great for us. That said, individuals have in general been less interested in going into academia than they have in the past. A non-trivial reason for this is the somewhat less lucrative pay packages compared to what they used to be, at least in relative terms, and more interest in other fields. So, kind of two-edged sword. There are more openings. They're not as competitive as they could be because the job pay is maybe not as great as it once was. So yeah, some things to think about if you are going into higher education, if that is your dream job. In general, I have to make the recommendation that if this is what you want to do, then like me, this would be a good choice. If you're just thinking of this as a job, there is better pay, less drama, no 2029 cliff coming in not higher ed. So take that into consideration. I would only recommend you going into higher ed if that is your passion. If it's not, there's positions elsewhere. If you're in the STEM fields, that's going to be a little bit blunted by the fact that grant-funded research is always a big thing. So the future is still the future. We still don't quite know what the future is. So with that said, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in later videos, assuming I haven't scared you off already. So I almost forgot. I was going to share with you a few references, kind of where am I getting this whole idea from. Okay, there's kind of two key books from the same author, Nathan Grawe. I'm probably butchering the guy's name, my apologies. Demographics and Demand and The Agile College. Both of these are a very good read. They are really meant for college administrators, but as a college faculty or prospective faculty, they're a good kind of primer to what's going on. He goes into a ton of detail with like geographical variation, etc. It is, however, US-centric. However, most of the commentary I'm seeing, and Grawe kind of points this out at least somewhat, this is not a US-centric issue, so the US is not alone. If you want a little bit more of a global view, Peter Zeihan just did a book, and I always get it wrong, The End of the World is Just the Beginning. Just came out, love it. He did the audiobook. I always love it when the author does their own audiobook. He's hilarious. A few more four-letter words than you would expect in an academic work, but he's still hilarious. This is not focusing on kind of an academic perspective. This is on a much more geopolitical, economic perspective. And he also goes into kind of the breaking down of global trade as we knew it during the latter part of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century. And kind of the take home here is this demographic trend that Grawe is talking about in the United States is more of an issue in the rest of the world. Where we're having a noticeable dip there, most of the rest of the world is having almost a crash, demographically speaking. So, ideas of, well, if we can't get, American students, we'll get not American students to come over from someplace else. That's not actually going to help that much because other places are having the same issues and they've got their colleges and universities, many of them very, very good, that are attracting students. So yeah, this is a total number of students going down kind of issue. So 3 books I strongly recommend checking out. I definitely enjoyed them. Zeihan is by far the most enjoyable read, although also the darkest and most depressing. But once again, great narrator, great speaker. He's got a ton of stuff online, giving talks, etc. Okay, so with that said, see you in later videos.